Hey everybody, it's Macy, and welcome back to Spooky Pillows. Today I'll be reading a true crime-inspired story. If you're new here, please make sure to like and subscribe. Enjoy. On the morning of October 13th, 2013, 22-year-old Emily Westbrook packed a small hiking bag, tossed a flannel shirt into the back seat of her old Honda Civic, and left her Asheville apartment just after 7:30 a.m. She didn't leave a note, didn't text anyone, no Instagram story, no call to her boyfriend, her mother, or her best friend. She simply left. It wasn't unusual for Emily to go hiking alone. If anything, it was her reset button, her therapy. Nestled in the shadows of North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains, Emily had grown up surrounded by trees, trails, and the kind of silence that most people found unsettling. But she loved it. As a student at UNC Asheville, she often escaped into the Pisgah National Forest or the nearby Blue Ridge Parkway on weekends, unplugging from everything. "I don't like noise," she once told a classmate. "People are loud, trees are honest." Emily wasn't loud either. She was the kind of person who smiled small, thought deeply, and made you feel like she noticed more than she let on. Her professors described her as focused, artistic, and quietly brilliant. She was majoring in environmental studies with a minor in photography, and she'd recently started working on a personal photo project, abandoned places reclaimed by nature. That detail, seemingly benign at the time, would later change everything. Her last known location was the Craggy Gardens trailhead, about 20 miles northeast of Asheville. The area was known for its sweeping mountain views and thick rhododendron tunnels, especially vibrant in the fall. The security camera at the ranger station captured her car entering the parking lot at 8:42 a.m. She was alone. She wore black leggings, a faded UNC hoodie, and a tan beanie. Her hiking boots were worn but sturdy. The footage showed nothing unusual. And then, nothing. No return footage, no 911 call, no messages. By 7 p.m. that night, Emily's roommate Lauren called her cell, straight to voicemail. By 9:15 p.m., she reported her missing. Lauren told police that Emily wasn't reckless. "She doesn't do dumb shit," she said. "She's careful. If she didn't come back, it's because she couldn't." When sheriff's deputies arrived at the trailhead the next morning, they found Emily's Civic still parked in the gravel lot. The doors were locked. Her keys were still in the ignition. Her phone sat on the passenger seat, dead. A half-drunk bottle of water was in the cup holder, and her trail guide notebook was tucked under the seat. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass. It looked exactly like someone had parked their car, gone for a hike, and never came back. Search teams began scouring the area that afternoon. Dogs, drones, volunteers, and rangers combed the dense woods for any trace of her. For the first 72 hours, everyone assumed she'd gotten lost. Maybe she slipped and fell. Maybe she wandered off trail chasing the perfect photo. But there was no trail of breadcrumbs, no footprints, no dropped gear, just cold mountain air, thick brush, and the kind of silence that becomes deafening when you're listening for someone who may never return. By day 5, the tone had shifted. The sheriff publicly admitted they were no longer treating this as a standard missing hiker case. The FBI was notified. Posters went up across the region. Tips poured in. Hikers who thought they saw her, drivers who swore they passed someone matching her description, psychics who claimed she was being held in a cellar. Nothing checked out. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's disappearance began to draw media attention. The case had all the eerie ingredients. A beautiful young woman vanishing from a popular trail, no witnesses, no signs of struggle, no definitive clues. It felt too clean, too quiet, too staged. Her mother, Dana Westbrook, appeared on the local news pleading for her daughter's return. "Emily, if you're out there and you're scared, please just come home. We love you. We miss you. We won't stop looking." Her voice cracked with the weight of uncertainty. The kind of pain that doesn't scream but echoes. Emily's boyfriend, Jake Halpern, was questioned repeatedly. A grad student at UNC Chapel Hill, he said he hadn't seen Emily in person in nearly a week, but they'd texted the night before she disappeared. She said she was going hiking early and probably wouldn't have service, Ristow, he told detectives. He seemed distraught, cooperative, and without a clear motive. Still, police kept him on their radar. That's what you do in these cases. Start with the people closest. The same went for Lauren, Emily's roommate, who admitted that Emily had been acting weird in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. She was jumpy, like watching the windows more. She stopped walking to class at night. I thought maybe it was just midterm stress, but now I don't know. Maybe she was scared. When asked if Emily ever mentioned feeling unsafe, Lauren hesitated. She said she thought someone was following her a few weeks ago, like a truck that kept showing up near the trailheads she visited. I told her to report it. She said she would. But there was no police report. As winter crept in and the leaves fell from the trees, the case went cold. Literally and figuratively. Snow dusted the Blue Ridge. The posters faded. Search efforts scaled back. Emily Westbrook had vanished without a trace. Into the woods, into speculation, into silence. 10 years later, that silence would be broken. But what happened to Emily in those woods was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. When someone vanishes, investigators always begin with a question that's simple, but rarely easy. Who were they really? In the case of Emily Westbrook, that answer wasn't as straightforward as it first seemed. To the outside world, Emily was quiet, independent, smart. But as detectives dug deeper into her life, they found a trail of subtle contradictions, small fractures in the image her loved ones thought they knew. If something had happened to her, someone close to her might know more than they were saying. The first to be questioned, and watched closely, was her boyfriend, Jake Halpern. Jake was 24, a second-year graduate student at UNC Chapel Hill, studying behavioral psychology. He and Emily had been together a little over a year. Their relationship, at least online, appeared solid. Photos of weekend trips, cozy apartment nights, even a shared Spotify playlist titled For Quiet Drives. But when investigators asked Jake about the days leading up to Emily's disappearance, some of his answers didn't quite match the tone of their supposedly close relationship. I hadn't seen her in 4 or 5 days, he told detectives. She was busy with school. I had exams. We weren't texting much that week. That struck them as odd. Emily had gone missing on a Sunday. Jake claimed they hadn't seen each other since the previous Tuesday. He hadn't called when she didn't check in. He didn't report her missing. According to her roommate, he didn't even ask if she was okay until Monday evening, after the police had already gotten involved. When pressed on this, Jake seemed defensive. We gave each other space. That's how we worked. I didn't want to be clingy. He also denied knowing anything about the specific trail Emily had gone to that day. But her roommate, Lauren Dempsey, told a different story. She told Jake where she was going. I heard her say it on the phone. Something about checking out an old ranger outpost near Craggy Gardens. He was the last person she spoke to. Lauren's interview raised even more questions. A theater major and Emily's roommate for the past 2 years, Lauren described Emily as creative, kind, and kinda secretive. The two were friendly, but not exactly close. Emily kept to herself. She had her photography, her books, her hikes. We didn't hang out that much, but I always felt like she had layers, like she was only giving you part of the picture. When asked about any recent changes in Emily's behavior, Lauren didn't hesitate. She'd been weird. Not bad weird, just off, jumpy, distracted. Like she was always scanning the room. She even started keeping a little pocket knife in her bag. When I joked about it, she just said, "It makes me feel better." More unsettling was what detectives found in Emily's room. Her space was neat, almost obsessively so. A camera bag sat in the corner, batteries charged, lenses wrapped in microfiber cloth. Books lined her shelves, field guides, poetry, a dog-eared copy of Into the Wild. But it was what they found in the trash that changed the tone of the investigation entirely. Inside a small plastic bin were fragments of a torn notebook, pages scorched as if someone had tried to burn them in the sink and failed. The words were smeared, partially illegible, but certain lines stood out. Keep hearing that noise again. I know someone followed me from Bent Creek. Don't go up there alone. And finally, I don't trust Jake anymore. Next to the shredded paper was a yellow sticky note with 5 haunting words. Don't go up there. Ever. Detectives quickly bagged everything and had the fragments reconstructed by forensic techs. While much of it remained incomplete, one full entry stood out. September 29th, 2013. Went up to the old cabins again. Something feels wrong. Heard whistling around 4 p.m. No one should have been out there. Followed me all the way back to the overlook. Same gray truck parked near the trailhead. 2 days in a row now, I'm being watched. Emily had never told her mother about the entries. She hadn't reported anything to police, and yet she'd been documenting fear, paranoia, and a growing sense that someone, or something, was stalking her in the woods. The mention of the cabins immediately caught the attention of detectives. Locals had long whispered about a stretch of abandoned ranger cabins deep in Pisgah National Forest, unofficially known as Whispering Pines. The structures built in the 1930s had fallen into disrepair decades earlier. They weren't on most maps, and they weren't accessible by any marked trail. But hikers sometimes stumbled across them and posted eerie photos online, decaying walls, mold-covered mattresses, strange symbols carved into the wood. The place had developed a kind of dark folklore. Stories of disappearances, cults, or ghosts. Nothing official, but enough to give it a reputation. When detectives asked Lauren if Emily had mentioned Whispering Pines by name, she nodded. Yeah, she was obsessed with that place. Said she was going to photograph how nature was reclaiming it. I told her it sounded creepy, and she just smiled and said, "That's the point." Meanwhile, Jake insisted he'd never heard of the cabins. But when investigators searched his laptop, they discovered he had Googled Whispering Pines Blue Ridge just 2 days before Emily vanished. When confronted, he claimed it was just curiosity, that Emily had mentioned it in passing, and he wanted to know what it was. It wasn't enough to arrest him, but it was enough to cast a long shadow. The people closest to Emily were either hiding something, or they didn't know her as well as they thought. And then came the photo. 6 weeks after Emily vanished, a Reddit user posted a blurry, unsettling image from a hike near Craggy Gardens. The title read, "Creepy Shot." Anyone recognize this woman? In the photo, standing just outside the doorway of a decrepit wooden cabin, was a pale figure in a tan beanie and black leggings. Her face was hard to make out, distorted by distance and motion blur, but the resemblance was uncanny. It looked like Emily. And just like that, the case shifted from missing person to something else entirely. The photograph was grainy, dark, and a little distorted, taken from what looked like the edge of a clearing just before dusk. But the outline of the woman in the picture was unmistakable. Black leggings, a faded tan beanie, a figure standing just outside a decaying wooden cabin, partially turned toward the forest. Her face was slightly blurred, like she was moving, or maybe trying not to be seen. To most people scrolling Reddit that night, it was just another creepy outdoors photo, one of hundreds posted by hikers exploring abandoned places. But to the Westbrook family, it was something else. It was hope. A user going by the name at Pine Knots posted it under the title, "Creepy Shot? Anyone recognize this woman?" The caption read, "Took this pic last weekend near an old ranger cabin in the Pisgah Forest. My dog started freaking out when we got close, and I swear someone was watching me the whole time. Thought I was alone, but snapped this quick before turning around. Anyone else ever been to this spot?" The comments were quick to dismiss it. just a weird stranger, or maybe a fellow hiker. But within 24 hours, someone linked the post to a missing person case out of Asheville. The resemblance was too strong. And the location? It was only a few miles from where Emily Westbrook's car had been found. Investigators reached out to the poster, a 31-year-old named Daniel Casey, who lived in nearby Black Mountain. He told them he hadn't seen any missing person reports until after the photo went viral. But he vividly remembered that day. I was hiking out near one of the side trails. Not really an official path. I like exploring weird spots. I heard something moving in the trees. Not like an animal, more like pacing. I looked up and saw someone just standing in the doorway of the cabin. She didn't wave, didn't say anything, just stood there, staring. Then I heard this loud crack behind me, like a branch snapping, and I ran. He didn't go back to investigate. But when detectives asked him to retrace his steps, he took them to the exact location. A moss-covered clearing about 3 miles off the main Craggy Gardens trailhead. And there it was, a rotting cabin, its roof partially collapsed, porch caved in, and the faint outline of what once was a U.S. Forest Service sign nailed above the door. It was real. And more importantly, it was part of Whispering Pines. The investigators quickly launched a full forensic sweep of the area. Drones circled overhead. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Every inch of the surrounding woods was combed for any trace of Emily. But once again, there was nothing. No clothing, no blood, no footprints, no DNA. The cabin was empty, but it felt wrong. Inside, they found a rusted bed frame, broken furniture, and markings on the walls. Carvings, dozens of them. Most were random. Initials, names, dates long faded. But in one corner, hidden beneath a layer of rotted wallpaper, was something that made investigators stop cold. Scratched into the wood, over and over in uneven, frantic handwriting, were the words, "Don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him." It was unclear who had written it, or when, but it was enough to rattle even the most seasoned officers. And just like that, the whispers about Whispering Pines, stories once dismissed as Appalachian folklore, suddenly felt a lot more real. Local legend painted the cabins as a cursed place. Built in the 1930s by Civilian Conservation Corps workers, they were meant to house rangers and trail crews. But a fire in the 1960s destroyed most of the structures, and the Forest Service officially shut them down soon after. For years, the cabins sat empty, slowly being swallowed by the forest. But stories persisted. People spoke of screams at night, of strange symbols painted in ash, of a man who lived out there alone, warning hikers not to go looking for what doesn't want to be found. No one knew his name. Some claimed he'd been a ranger who lost his mind. Others said he was just a myth. But someone had been out there. And if Emily had followed that trail, either for her photo project or something more, then she might have met someone who didn't want her to leave. Back in Asheville, attention turned once again to Jake Halpern, Emily's boyfriend. When shown the photo, he froze. He didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, he whispered, "That's her. That's Emily." But his reaction raised new questions. Detectives asked why, if he'd known she was interested in Whispering Pines, he hadn't mentioned it earlier. Why he'd searched for that exact location 2 days before she vanished. And why he never followed up when she stopped responding to messages. Jake claimed he didn't think it was relevant. She talked about so many places. I didn't know that's where she was going. I didn't think she'd actually go alone. His story wasn't enough to charge him, but it wasn't enough to clear him either. Then came a chilling detail from Emily's burned journal pages, one that hadn't been shared publicly yet. In a partially reconstructed entry dated September 24th, 3 weeks before her disappearance, Emily wrote, "Jake doesn't believe me. He says I'm being dramatic. But I saw the truck again. Parked outside the apartment last night. Same stickers, same dent in the side. I think he knows I'm getting close." She never said who he was. But now, investigators had a photo, a location, and a trail that was growing darker by the hour. Because what had started as a missing persons case was now beginning to feel like a game of cat and mouse. One where Emily might have uncovered something she wasn't supposed to see. And whoever was out there in those woods might not have been working alone. Whispering Pines had long been a ghost story. A name hikers passed around over beers and campfires. A curiosity on old forest maps. But for Emily Westbrook, it had become something more. An obsession, maybe even a warning. And now, the world knew what she'd been chasing. In the weeks following the viral photograph, the FBI joined the investigation. Federal jurisdiction kicked in due to the location, Pisgah National Forest. Dozens of agents, forensic teams, and volunteers fanned out across the dense woods near the abandoned cabins. Emily's case was now a national story, and pressure was mounting to find something, anything. Then, on October 21st, 47 days after Emily disappeared, they did. It started with a trail dog named Leo, a 7-year-old German shepherd trained to detect human remains. On a foggy morning sweep near an unmarked ravine, Leo stopped cold, started whining, pawing at the earth. Buried beneath a tangle of pine needles and wet moss was a shredded piece of canvas fabric. Not much, just enough to identify. It matched the lining of the camera bag Emily had carried with her on every hike. 10 feet further, searchers found the remnants of a phone. Shattered screen, burned edges, the SIM card missing. And just beyond that, a boot print. Fresh. Investigators widened the search area and began combing for anything that might link to a suspect. But the terrain was working against them. Rain had washed away most trace evidence, and the soil was too soft to hold a clear impression. Still, they had something new now, a direction. And they had a question no one could shake. If someone was watching Emily, were they still out there? Later that week, a break came from the most unlikely place. A park ranger named Dennis Crowley, 62, recently retired. He'd worked the Pisgah district for over 30 years and had followed Emily's story since the beginning. After seeing the photo from Reddit, he contacted investigators with a strange but potentially crucial memory. Back in 2010, Crowley had responded to a series of reports about a man living off-grid near the Whispering Pines site. Said he was a veteran, had no ID, camped in silence. Locals nicknamed him Ghost. Not for any supernatural reason, but because he vanished every time someone got close. When rangers finally approached his shelter, it was empty. All they found were canned goods, hand-carved walking sticks, and dozens of books. Mostly survival manuals, and one journal. The entries were cryptic. Ramblings about keeping the woods clean and watching the watchers. Mentions of strange symbols. Diagrams of cabin layouts. Crowley dismissed it at the time as the work of a disturbed squatter. But now he wondered. Something about that guy never sat right with me, Miss, he told detectives. And if she ran into him, I don't think he'd let her walk away. Using drone scans, teams mapped old footpaths and camping areas around the ravine. That's when they discovered a trail of hand-built snares leading to a clearing, clearly lived in but abandoned, just like the first time. They found bones from small animals, burned journals, and a tarp-covered lean-to. On one of the trees nearby, someone had carved a word. Still. Then finally, another piece of Emily. A torn sleeve caught in a jagged branch with a smear of dried blood too old to test properly. There was no body, no confirmed cause of death, no suspect in custody. But the implication was clear. Emily Westbrook had stumbled into something dangerous. Whether it was a single off-grid drifter or something more complex, she had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The case went cold, officially, just after the new year. Jake Halpern, Emily's boyfriend, eventually moved back to Pennsylvania. He was never charged. To this day, opinions about him are divided. Some people believe he simply mishandled the disappearance of someone he loved. Others think he knows more than he's ever admitted. Lauren Dempsey, the roommate, transferred schools and went silent online. She's refused all interviews, but sources close to her say she still wakes up screaming some nights. And Emily's mother? She still drives up to the mountains every September, on the anniversary of the last time she saw her daughter, leaves flowers at the trailhead, and waits. Because while the investigation slowed, the stories didn't. Over the past 2 years, more hikers have reported strange things near Whispering Pines. Sounds at night, distant singing, the soft creak of cabin doors that shouldn't move in the wind. One traveler swore he saw a woman walking the ridgeline alone at dusk. Black leggings, tan beanie, head turned just slightly. He didn't follow her. And no one's been able to verify the photo, the boot print, or the identity of Ghost. But the forest remembers. And somewhere deep beneath the pines, part of Emily Westbrook is still there. Watching, waiting, whispering.